The puppet pin tool is the workhorse of the three puppet tools. You use it to set the points about which you control the distortion of the object or the layer that you're working on. So to see how that works, let's go to Working Files and open up After Effects Projects, and then go on down to 1202 Puppet Pin. We have 3 layers in this comp. We're going to work on each one of them one at a time, starting with the shape layer. And I've got 2 shapes inside the shape layer for a reason. I want to show you what happens when you've got 2 objects inside the same layer. So let's go on up here and get the Puppet Pin tool. You click on this and you see there are 3 tools: Pin, Overlap, and Starch. The Pin tool is the one we're going to work with here. I'm going to select that. You can see that it's active based upon the icon there. If I selected something else, it would change. So we'll go back to this first one here. When you click on that, you get these properties showing up here. The mesh is checked to show the mesh. When we click on here, there'll be a mesh that appears. Expansions 3, triangles 350. I'll explain that in a second. So just click anywhere inside the rectangle and just watch what happens. The mesh shows up inside here. There are 350 triangles here. If this had been a really, really large rectangle, you'd still have 350 triangles. Of course, you can change that number if you want, but that's the default number. At least it's the default number here in my system. You see that the expansion is 3, and what that means is After Effects looks for the edge of the object and then expands the mesh slightly beyond the edge into the transparency. All right, let's also see what happens now that we've clicked on this down inside the shape layer. Open that up. And you see there's an effects property group now where there wasn't one before. Click on that. You see there's now a puppet effect. All 3 of those tools up here all go inside the puppet effect. They're all part of the puppet effect. You open that up, and you'll see there's a Mesh 1. This is Mesh 1 here. When we click on this one later, it's going to become Mesh 2. Scroll down a bit here, open up Mesh 1, this property group, and you see that there's triangles and expansion matching these numbers up here. Scroll down a little bit more. And then here's the Deform property group. The Deform property group is where you keep the puppet pin tools. There's puppet pin number 1. That's that pin right there. And each pin has one property, and that property is position. And note that the keyframe, the toggle animation switch, is on by default. So whenever you click on here to add a pin, you also add a keyframe for that pin automatically. It's one of the few properties in any effect where the keyframes are on by default. Let's add another pin here. Just click over there. Second pin, and it adds another pin here, another pin property group that has that one property, disposition, already keyframed. All right, let me add one more pin. And now we'll take a look at pin 3 here. There's the position. And I'll change the position a little bit. And then those numbers will change down there. If I were to keyframe that, and go over here and move it, then you can see that we can animate that change over time like that. All right, I'm going to click inside this other object and hover there. You can see where the mesh is going to go. Click once, and that adds a second mesh. That's just what I wanted to show you to make sure you understand that you've got this mesh over here, that's mesh 1. You click here and you made a second mesh. So you can have one puppet effect with multiple meshes and many pins inside them. Okay, I'm going to go on down to the next layer here. Close down this one. Turn off its visibility and turn on visibility for this little puppet. Get rid of those little guys simply by clicking on this. And there we go. Now we got this puppet. I want to animate this thing. This is really the bread and butter, the meat and potatoes. This is where the rubber meets the road, folks. I want to have this little guy just do a little bit of a easygoing dance. So I'm just going to add some pinpoints to him, just some pins to him. Going down here where his ankle is and click there. Adds one. There's the mesh. I add another one over there. And now it should be a simple matter, right? Just to take this one, let's say, and just drag it to the right here and see what happens. But, oh, look at that. It's kind of doing something really horrific. And that's because the mesh is connected there. Let me Control or Command Z to undo that a little bit. This mesh, as you notice, overlaps this little gap here. That's because the expansion is 3. We need to make sure that the mesh doesn't overlap so we can have separate limbs here. So I'm going to zoom in a bit by going Control or Command plus. Take my hand tool, press the space bar. I want to try to separate this by reducing the expansion. Right now it's 3. How about -3? Let's try that just to really zoom in on it there. -3, tab. And now you can see they're separated. But now what we've done is we've taken the mesh and we've pulled it inside the object, which creates some really strange anomalies. If I take this little point here and drag it, you'll see that we actually slice away part of our fella here by taking the mesh inside him. Not usually what you want to see happen. So I'll do Control or Command Z to undo that. Let's see if we can fix this here. So I'm going to look back at the expansion. Instead of -3, let's just try +2. And they're still connected. If I pull it apart there, you see they're still connected. That's no good. We'll try, how about 1? And up, looks like that's going to work. And the reason I went 1 at a time there like that is because if I get too small, then I do slice things away again. So I think 1 is a good point to stop. I'm going to pull this to one side here and see what happens. And I see that I left a little bit of his toe there. Look at that, just a touch of his toe. Even at 1, it left a little bit behind. I might want to go to 1.1 or 1.2 or something like that. But for our purposes, that little bit left over there, not a problem really. So that's fine. Okay. Let me zoom back out again, Shift / to see the whole thing. And now let's animate these guys. Scrolling down, you can see that every time we add a puppet pin under the deform property group, we have a keyframe there automatically. See they're round here because we're not looking at the property directly, but there you go. There's the keyframe. So I'm going to add a couple more here right about that spot. Put one up on his torso here, up toward his chest there. And now let's just move forward in time a little bit here and take this leg and move it over. There you go. It's going to be very stiff motion here. And then move a little forward in time again. Take the second leg and move it over. That's going to look strange. Let's see what that looks like. You go. So the guy kind of came over behind him because we keyframed that one after the fact. We need the keyframe in place there before we move it down a little bit farther to the right. So let me go down there and see what we got. I'm going to click on this one here to say, which one is this? It's Puppet Pin Tool. We can see that. So I'm going to go over here to this first keyframe. And instead of having a long distance between the two here, I'm going to add one. I just copy this first one, Control or Command C, and then paste this right there so he stays in place, Control or Command V. Now he'll stay put when we go from one to the next, and then he'll go to the next one over like that. See that works? Okay. Now his body seems to be kind of stuck in time. We need to move it too, so I'm going to go over here to this last keyframe. I can move him over like that. Move his upper torso over as well. There we go. And let's just see how that worked out. One over there, and then one over there like that. Which, you know, is not really elegant, right? We probably want to have him not be so stiff. We can put some more points here in his knees if we want. Notice when we hover, sometimes we see yellow. That shows the original placement. So if we want to move him over in time, we go a little bit like this. Maybe move his knee a little bit now. A little more elegant there. Like this. Bring his knee over too. So even though we're doing these one at a time, they will in fact animate together like that. Something like so. But now you might notice that when we move things around, things kind of get distorted. If I take this, let's say, and click on this one and shift click on this one down here, they're going to work together now. If I pull it up, it gets kind of squished and maybe distorts other parts of the body. Or if I take this one up here and move it, it kind of moves everything, and maybe you don't want to move everything. We can use what's called the starch tool to deal with that, and we're going to talk about that one in an upcoming lesson. Let's say we want to have this leg here. I'm going to put down the other one here with a shift click. We want it to go, let's say, in front of the other one instead of behind it. We can use what's called the overlap tool to do that. If you want to make him wave with this his hand here, just click there and then click down here and then move the hand like that independently of everything else. But notice how things kind of react. We would use starch here to keep that from happening, or just add another point. Then it won't affect it quite so much. Hello. Okay. So that's basically how you can add these pins and animate them using a little puppet like this or any other object. I'll scroll down and show you one more thing with text. Text is kind of fun when you work with the puppet tool. Click on you and select this text. Distort this text. Okay, let's just try to do that. First of all, I want to make it a little bit larger. Take my selection tool and kind of make it more substantial so you can't miss it, right? There we go. Look at my puppet tool. Now if I click here, let's just see what happens. It selects the letter D or the letter O or whatever I select. But let's say I want to distort the entire phrase here. I'll show you how to do that. I'll do Control or Command Z a few times to undo all that. What you need to do is you need to create a mask, and then you can distort the entire thing. So go get the rectangle tool like that, make sure the layer is selected, and draw a mask around this. Very simple. Now you go get your pin tool, your puppet pin tool, and click anywhere inside the mask. You can see it where it is there. Just click anywhere in there. And now that puts this mesh around inside the entire mask. So if you put some pins here, over here, and now you start distorting the entire layer of text instead of just individual letters. And I think it's really cool that you can distort individual letters like that. That's great. But it's also nice when you can do the entire text string like this as well. There you go. So that, folks, is how the Puppet Pin tool works.